grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We about to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brandon T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brandon Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do. Hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, talk shop, and reminisce about crazy old stories. I am sober now, but that is still one of my favorite things to do. Hang out with someone and reminisce about the good old days. Most weeks I will be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. Former pro wrestler turned comic, Matt Maran.
What's up? Hell yeah. Nice little pro wrestling intro there.
There you go. Yeah. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. Hanging in there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted you to plug everything up front. I know you do Comedy Fight Club, everything like that. Let everybody know where they can find you. Tell everybody what's going on.
So I'm on Instagram and Twitter at RealMattMarin, Comedy Fight Club, best roast battle show in the fucking world. At Comedy Fight NYC. And youtube.com/Comedy Fight Club to watch all of our new episodes. We are coming up. We have at the Stand Comedy Club on September 11th, 7-year anniversary of Comedy Fight Club. 7 years ago, we decided to do a roast battle on 9/11 and then just kept doing it, so it became our anniversary.
Oh, wow. That's fitting for you guys.
And just some locker room talk on Twitter and Instagram. The podcast is Locker Room Talk. I do with Joe Gorman and Bobby Sheehan.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you guys do on that?
Honestly, it's just three dudes hanging out having some locker room talk.
Okay.
And people think it's like I'm the sports fan. Joe and Bobby know nothing about sports. It's just so anytime we say anything offensive, which is like every episode, it was just a little locker room talk.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's the weird thing is more and more, especially in New York, I'm starting to realize that the comedy scene is filled with a lot of like nerds.
Yeah, there's
like I try to I played sports my whole life, and the people who care about it in comedy are like Bill Burr and Paul Verzi.
Yeah,
like the people I do mics with don't give a shit. And I'm
there's a lot of so I started like 2012 or so. So when I first started doing stand-up, it was all the people influenced by like the Patton Oswalt, comedians of comedy, Louis C.K., which so it was
Dimitri
all like
Martin, all those, yeah.
And also although Dana Gould, all those guys are like beasts of comics. Like I don't think you're less funny if you're doing nerd comedy, if anything. But it went so far the other way where it's like there's so few comics I could talk to about sports.
Yeah, I've noticed it too because it's weird because I have the bit about cutting my own face open when I played football in college, and whenever I bring it up, like if I'm running it at an open mic to like get the timing down because I have a set coming up, everyone's just kind of like, oh, you're a psycho, but that's weird. But whenever I bring it up, like if I do it at a show and another like older comic hears it, every once in a while they'll be like, you played fucking college football in Florida, and I'm like, thank you. Yes.
Dude, it's just anywhere, do any road gig, anywhere, mention a local sports team. Even the nerds in Cincinnati know about the Bengals.
Yeah.
Like,
they're like, yeah.
Some of it is in New York. There's so many things to do other than you could live in New York and not know how the Knicks are doing.
Well, and that's the weird thing about it, too, is that basketball is obviously king, and then it's baseball, and then it's football. And I grew up in the South, where the only thing anybody ever cared about was football.
Yeah, and hockey I'm a big hockey fan. Hockey's like, it's weird. It seems like it's not really that popular in New York, but the Rangers and Islanders will sell 20,000 tickets every game.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's just New York is so big.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
And it's interesting in comedy because I grew up like I was like the nerd of the sports fans because I grew up studying baseball statistics. Even though I like became a wrestler, like bulked up and everything, I'm still like an unathletic Jewish kid on the inside. Like that's always in there.
Where did you grow up at?
In Queens.
Oh, so you grew up in New York?
Yeah.
Okay.
And grew up playing Little League, every sport, and I was always, at a certain point, the athleticism would catch up because I was the most dedicated. I was studying baseball history. Yeah. I learned how to do math by calculating batting averages and on-base percentage. But at a certain point, athleticism catches up. So like one year, it's tryouts tryouts for the first time, and I'm like, I'm probably not going to make a team, but there were 12 teams and only 10 people trying out for catcher, so I became a catcher.
No matter what, yeah.
I learned how to call pitches when I was like 11. No other kid was calling pitches. Just any advantage I could get to stay playing sports. But that was the thing. I always I had the same interests as the jocks, but the same athletic ability as the nerds. So I kind of got along with everyone, which is why even in comedy now I get along with people, but I'm still watching football every Sunday. If I'm home on a night, I'm watching baseball games.
Who's your team? The Jets or the Giants?
I'm New York sports in every sport but football. Please,
really?
Please don't kick me off the podcast.
No, not at all.
I'm a Cowboys fan.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Did not see that coming.
So I grew up in New York where the Jets and Giants were in Jersey, so I didn't really root for them.
Yeah.
I would drive past Nassau Coliseum. I knew where Yankee Stadium and MSG was, but the Jets, Giants, that's as far away as anything.
Yeah.
So I had favorite players. I had a Brett Favre poster on my wall as a kid.
Okay.
The teams that I played as in Madden would be my favorite teams for a year. And then in high school, a buddy of mine moved up from Texas, and he had beer that he would get. He was underage. I don't know how he got it, but he would let us all come over and drink beer and watch football on the weekends.
You just love the Cowboys.
The rule was you could only drink my beer if you root for the Longhorns and Cowboys.
So you became a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, and that was the year the Longhorns won the title.
Okay.
So that was just such a magical football year. I'm like, I'm with you on football. So that's what I tell people, too. It's like, I didn't get the Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman. I got the Romo years as a Cowboys fan.
God. Did you, you said that was in high school. Was that when you guys first started drinking, or were you drinking before that?
That was my first drinking crew.
Was it?
Yeah, I was 15, and that my buddy from Texas was a year older than me, and we had two. My high school was across the street from Queensboro Community College in Queens, and so two of those guys were 19, and they knew where to go to drink after school on Bell Boulevard. Anyone in Queens probably knows this already. You can go to Bell Boulevard, and they did an ID, especially after school during the weekdays, especially back in that day. So we would go, and I would. That was when Texas Hold'em was really big on ESPN.
Yeah, I remember.
So we all thought we were real bad. We would go and play Texas Hold'em and drink in bars after school.
Really?
Yeah.
At 15?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was 15. The other guy was 16. Two 19-year-olds.
19, yeah.
Then there was one kid who was 13 who went to a junior high school that hung out with us. We called him Scrappy because he just wanted to fight everybody all the time.
Really?
Yeah, but that was our main crew.
God, how long were you guys all hanging out together?
About a year and a half.
Okay.
Most of us were getting in trouble. I was kind of class clown in school and stuff, and then that was my first. So I was troublemaker, but the teacher would always say he's a good kid who needs to keep his mouth shut. I was never a bad kid. I was a good kid misbehaving, being mischievous. But then, around that time is when I had just done my last wrestling tournament. My first girlfriend broke up with me, and I was
at 15.
I was drinking and fighting.
It's so funny you say this because we just had TJ Francis on a couple weeks ago. Happy birthday! This is your birthday episode. This will come out in about 10 days.
Okay, yeah,
we'll date it a little bit. But we had TJ Francis on, and he had kind of a similar story where he started drinking in 8th grade.
Yeah,
and then he really wanted to make the high school baseball team, and it was an intense team.
Yeah,
and so he the way he put it sounded like a story you'd hear in AA. He cleaned up his life, started going to church, started working out. And I'm like, you were 8th grade going into 9th grade.
Yeah.
And you had kind of a similar situation.
Well, no, mine was,
but you were going down.
Yeah. That was, I had this
but it's still that same story you'd hear at a meeting kind of a setup where it's my girl broke up with me.
Yeah. It was probably the end of my athletic career because I had done amateur wrestling tournaments, and then that next year.
Was that through high school or was that on your own?
I had friends who were on high school teams, and you can enter the tournaments as a walk-on in the summer. So I would do a whole tournament as a walk-on tournament just to qualify for the real tournament.
Yeah.
And then I had also taken judo classes. I was doing other martial arts stuff. I did a judo move in a wrestling match that was illegal in Greco-Roman wrestling, which had happened before, and I would get dock points and then just be fine. This time the guy got hurt, and so I was...
What happened?
He landed on his head. He had a sprain in his neck. He ended up being fine, but it looked bad.
I thought you killed somebody.
Yeah, no, I didn't kill anyone. But they stopped allowing walk-ons in. And
these assholes don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, in my high school,
you stopped walk-ons for the entire state of New York.
Yeah, one of my friends who still did wrestling later on said they called it the Matt Maran rule.
There you go.
I mean, locally, I don't know if that was everywhere in New York or anything, but it was just for those specific tournaments. But then, then that was my freshman year of high school. I tried out for the baseball team, didn't make it.
Ah, shit.
First girlfriend, like quote unquote girlfriend. She lived in Florida, and we talked on AOL Instant Messenger mostly. We met like 2 or 3 times in real life.
Maddie, the little slut.
But in my head, I'm like,
what part of Florida did she live in?
I don't remember.
I was gonna say I might have known her.
She had family in New York, so she was up here in the summer, and we met, and I was like, I could handle a long distance relationship to
At
AIM.
15?
Yeah.
Oh god.
So break up with this girlfriend. Also, the reason we broke up was her cousin didn't like me and kept talking shit about me, and then I punched him.
Oh really?
And then she broke up with me for breaking a bone in her cousin's face. It wasn't really me. It was I punched him and he fell and hit the ground.
That's
the ground
actually,
is what broke his face.
It's
but
so funny you say that.
For me, I always was like, I fucking broke his face.
Yeah. I get so terrified. I actually just had this conversation with Savannah last night, and I ended up making a bit about it that I'm going to try out today. But she was like, "When was the last time you actually punched anyone in the face?"
Yeah.
And we're going back and forth about this. And I was like, I guess 2016.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even really a fight. It was my roommate wanted to get out of work, and this was back when I was drinking, and we were both hammered. And he goes, just hit me in the face as hard as you can. And that was the last time because before that, it was in jail, and that was in 2014.
Yeah.
So, but I told her exactly what you're talking about. I was like, I'm scared to get into an altercation now because I'm a lot stronger than I was then.
Yeah.
And if you hit someone and knock them out and then they crack their head on the concrete, they could die very easily, especially the back of their head.
Yeah.
That soft spot.
Yeah.
Like you could kill somebody.
Yeah. He like fractured his cheekbone.
Yeah.
Is what it was. But then, girl breaks up with me. I can't wrestle anymore. I'm not playing baseball. And I just start hanging out with these guys after school and drinking.
Hoodlums.
Yeah. I'm almost having this like, this is my life now. My life is, I'm like 15 and I'm like, everything I wanted to do is done. All of my dreams.
Life is over at 15. So then what ended up happening? So we were talking about it outside, how you kind of got into stand-up, but how did you go from amateur wrestling and then into high school not making any of the teams and then how did you end up getting into professional wrestling?
So around my senior year, or like I guess it was somewhere between junior and senior year, one of my friends who I'd done amateur wrestling with, his older brother was working on the independent circuit as a pro wrestler.
Okay.
And he would sometimes go to the shows, set up the ring and stuff. And I think for a little while he'd been asking me to come because I had watched wrestling like as a kid.
Yeah, you're a big wrestling fan, correct?
I've got back into it. Yeah, I watched it as a kid. My parents banned me from watching because they heard some kid was doing a move and killed someone, smart move. I would have liked. So even when I was doing amateur wrestling, I didn't tell my parents at first because I thought I'm not allowed to be wrestling. They would.
Well, yeah, because you were only like 14 at the time.
No, I started like at 12.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know the difference. My parents told me I'm not allowed to wrestle.
Yeah.
So, then I started watching again actually because in like my sophomore or junior year of high school, one of my teachers ended up getting fired because he was a wrestler and he wrestled in Japan when he was like for taking sick days.
Yeah.
And he ended up in WWE.
Oh, really?
As Matt Stryker, and he was doing a teacher character on TV.
Oh, really?
With a chalkboard in the ring, lecturing the fans about how they're dumb and uneducated. So I started watching again and got back into it. So then when my friends, like my older brother does this, you used to wrestle, you have a big mouth, I think you could maybe come and hang out with these guys and see what happens. So I started going to set up the ring beforehand, talking to some of the guys, and if we set up the ring early enough, they would teach us some stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
They would let us talk on the microphone a bit. They said I had good mic skills, which I didn't know what that meant at the time. I was just imitating my favorite guys.
Yeah.
They would have me talk to fans as they would come into the building, like kind of like warm up.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what warm up was, and I wanted to be a bad guy, so I would just insult people as they were
you were
coming
just a
into
heel?
the show. And they were like, "Well,
your life trajectory makes so much more sense now.
Yeah." And so they're like, "All right, we'll train you on some things," which I didn't know what that meant at the time. In hindsight, it meant we're gonna beat the shit out of you and try and get you to quit.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I was in a class with like 10 people, and it was literally just workworkouts for the first 2 weeks.
For the summer?
It was spring. It was over the weekends.
Okay.
This is like spring of my senior year.
So
of
summer
high
of
school.
junior year into your senior year.
I'm
you're doing
going
this.
and setting
Yeah.
up the ring and everything, and then by like spring of senior year, they say they'll train me.
Okay.
And so it's like, first day is just on a track, 2-mile run, a 5-mile run. They said after the first 2 miles, we get a book bag with 20-pound weights.
Yeah, there you go.
And then for the last mile, it's just off the track up a hill. And then they put us in some barn house with no air conditioning, some basement, and it's just before you leave here, you have to do 300 push-ups, 500 sit-ups, 1,000 squats, and it took me like 3 hours. I was skinny from amateur wrestling still, and I finished. I think there were 2 or 3 kids who finished after me. Maybe they didn't even finish. One kid quit. Next week, there's 3 of us.
Yeah.
And then we started learning how to take falls, which are not fake. You learn how to fall safely, not ways that have no pain.
Well, that's the thing too, is because we were talking about this outside, and I know I mentioned this to you before, but AEW was born in Jacksonville, and Tony Khan was one of my regulars at the restaurant I worked at down there, and I got to know him real well. So not real well, I got to know him.
Yeah.
And so then when AEW was going, we would go, he would give us tickets, and we would all go to the
Nice.
events, and then during the pandemic, when they still wanted an audience, they would only give out a certain number of tickets so we could all socially distance and stuff. And so he came to the restaurant and gave a bunch of us tickets.
Yeah.
And I remember going there watching it live because I hadn't been to a live event since like Bash at the Beach in '96.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, you were at that one?
Yeah.
That was that
Undertaker.
Bash or SummerSlam?
No.
Because Bash the Beach was the Hulk Hogan WCW.
That's it was
Okay.
WCW. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah. That's the one I went to, and then I remember we did go to a Raw one time.
Yeah.
And that's where I saw the Undertaker. But I hadn't been to wrestling since then, and I remember because obviously they're really good seats because there's nobody in the audience, and I remember watching it and like Darby Allin's like jumping off the top rope doing
He's
his
fucking
coffin
crazy,
drop, and I'm
yeah.
like, that's got to be painful.
Yeah.
Like just the physics of it has
Yeah.
to hurt. And because AEW's predicated a lot on that like wrestling aspect. Like it's not like
Yeah.
WWE where it's like, oh, big superstars and we get in there and the wrestling's almost secondary. The AEW, the wrestling's like the main thing. So they're flipping and flying and
Well, that's where I have a little bit of a gripe when you say they're all about the wrestling and then it's all flipping and flying. To me, that's not wrestling.
Okay, good point. No,
I think
'cause you
it's
would know
WWE.
better than I would.
AEW's more about the physicality of what's happening. They do storyline stuff. WWE's way more about the entertainment.
I guess
the
physicality
wrestling,
is the better, not wrestling, but physicality.
If anything, I wish AEW were more about the wrestling. When there are, I keep up with some. I don't watch as much as I used to, but there's also some guys who I'm not buddies with or close with, but I was on the same shows as them years ago, and now they're the big guys. So that's cool to see.
It is awesome to see.
So I'll keep up with some of that, and I generally keep tabs because I did it for so long. My body's like I don't do it anymore because of concussions, knee injury. I ended up having brain surgery.
Jesus Christ!
So I don't do it anymore, but I still keep up with it. And there's a lot of guys out there who do like you're watching them. And it's like this feels like a real fight happening right now. I think because of MMA, a lot of people are like, well, everyone knows wrestling is fake, so we can do fake-looking stuff as long as it looks cool. And to me, I'm like, I'm not here to see a fireworks show.
Yeah, exactly.
When I'm watching like a fight scene in a movie, if it's too crazy, like there's got to be even Fast and Furious movies are dumb, but there's some level of this guy is hurt and you see the cuts on him and you see like if you punch a guy in the face 30 times and there's no bruise or scratch or anything, it kind of
I kind of fast forward through a lot of that in movies. But I wanted to get back to, so like you were saying, and what I was elaborating on was it hurts.
Yes.
It is painful.
Yes.
And then you had mentioned, all your injuries and stuff. So when you, in the springtime, you're learning how to do falls. There's 3 of you in the class now. And then how does it grow into, because you actually did this for a while. So how does that continue?
A couple weeks later, I'm the only one in the class.
Oh, really?
And I was not like the most athletic or the most in shape. That goes back to the...
Well, I was going to say what you were talking about earlier.
Every other sport I played,
yeah.
I was the one to jump in the bottom of the pile all the time. And in wrestling, it really is way more about that than athleticism. At a certain point, some guys who are freak athletes are still going to be able to do a lot more than you.
Yeah.
But the dedication and the being willing to get beat up and
Look
come
at John
back.
Moxley.
Exactly.
John Moxley's my favorite wrestler right now. And the reason is because he's not shredded. He's not like 280 pounds.
Yeah.
He looks like a dude like just a dude. Like
Yeah.
I would see at a bar during Bike Week in Daytona.
Yeah.
But he kicks the shit out of people.
Yeah.
And he gets the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah, that's I guess when I watch wrestling, I don't want to see a guy who just looks like they could be me.
Oh, really?
I want to watch a guy that's
Yeah,
like
I like it though.
I like looking at someone doing something that I could never do.
Oh, see,
Yeah.
I'm different in that way.
Yeah.
Where when I watch it and I see John Moxley, like
I want to be able to relate to them personally.
Yeah.
But I also don't want, if I'm seeing someone doing something that I feel like I could do, part of me is kind of like, I'll go watch someone do something I can't do.
okay, there you go. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
Or at least, because it's all perception.
Yeah.
You don't need to actually be doing something I can't do. Make it look like you're doing something I can't do. That's what I was the master of because
Yeah.
I couldn't do so much. So I would just, even the very basic things, the things where you like twist someone's arm, you twist it a second or a third time, it looks insane. You're not really doing it.
Yeah, obviously.
But the whole thing is perception. But anyway, so I'm the last one in the class. I'm just the one willing to take an ass kicking, and I get thrown into a tag team match because that's one where I would have like less responsibility on me.
Yeah.
And I guess from there was kind of word of mouth, like people like you can work with this guy.
How did the tag team match come about? Because right now you're just training, so you're not actually in.
So two of the guys who were training me were on the show, and they're like, there's a match with two guys. They're facing a tag team of newer people, one guy, and you'll be that newer guy's partner.
Okay.
And you're just getting your ass kicked.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an easy spot because even if I'm messing up, the two guys are way bigger than me, and they could just actually start kicking my ass, and they'll still look fine.
Yeah.
The very first move, the guy, we met the guys beforehand, and my tag team partner had been doing it for a year, he said at least. In hindsight, he had no idea what he was doing, but I'm the completely newer guy, so I'm letting him do all the talking, and he was not good at doing all the talking. He pissed these guys off before the match started, because we're just getting our asses
On
kicked.
purpose or just like trying to
just
be a
being
heel
like,
and...
trying to be an overzealous kid who's like, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they're like, you're gonna fucking ruin this, so we're gonna do whatever we want now.
So this is just when you guys are talking
Going
about
over the match.
So this isn't on like, he's not like being like this isn't a promo or anything.
No, he's like,
you guys are just talking about
he's like the comic that talks to you before the show and is like kind of a dick, like who the fuck do you think you are?
Yeah.
He's like that. Except now we're about to go and do this illusion for an audience. So if you mess up,
piss them the fuck off.
so if you mess up, like if me and you were wrestling, if you're messing up if I give you a move and you don't make it look like it hurts you, you make me look bad, you make you look bad.
So we're gonna make sure it hurts you.
Yeah. So just overall, if you can't trust the person, also, I'm giving you a body slam. You're relying on me to tuck your head so you don't break your neck. Like everyone's working together at all times. So in comedy, if someone's an asshole, it's kind of like whatever. In pro wrestling, if someone's an asshole and I don't trust them, that's my life in your hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my ability to make money and get over with this crowd. So he's like, we're talking to them and they kind of just say, all right, whatever, we'll do whatever, which to me is like, I want to know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I would have let them do whatever they want. He's kind of like, I don't know, I kind of want to do this. It'll make me look a little better if I do this. I'm like, we're getting our asses kicked.
That's
we're
the
not going
whole
to
point,
look good. So yeah, then I didn't do any of the talking. So for all they know, I'm just as big of an asshole as him.
Yeah.
Match starts, and as soon as they walked away and they were like, we'll do whatever, he looks at me, he goes, all right, you start off. Of course. And so I walk in there, I go for a lockup, and he just punches me in the face.
Like
for real.
actually punches
Yes.
you?
I turn around, I catch the ropes, I turn back around, I act like it hurt more than it did.
Yeah.
It did hurt, but I turn back around, he hits me again for real, and this time I wobble a little bit more. So I'm trying to make him look like, look, I'm working with you, I'm making it look like
Come on.
And then I turn around, he goes to punch me again, and I duck. And he kind of goes over, so I'm like, maybe he's working with me now.
Yeah.
But I'm still in like fight or flight mode. I just start punching him.
Like really punching him?
Yeah. And he's like 100 pounds heavier than me.
Yeah.
He falls backwards, and at the time I was like, I'm pretty good. In hindsight, he was falling for me.
Yeah.
Falls back into the corner. I go up to him, and he kicks me in the knee, but barely touches me, but enough that I know, I should react to this like he kicked me in the knee. And then he grabs me I had really long hair. He grabs me by my hair and like whispers in my ear as he pulls me up, relax and work with me, and then barely touches me for the rest of the match.
Okay, so you ingratiated yourself.
I guess.
And then people started talking.
I've seen interviews online before where people are like, they'll test the young guys, but I'm like, when it's happening, you don't know.
Yeah.
I tag my partner in, and they just beat the shit out of him and never stop. but they realized that I was cool.
Yeah, and so then they started talking about
And
you
then
and
they
word of mouth, and
put
then
you in contact with somebody else, and then after a year or so, they let me talk on the microphone more. I get experience being a good bad guy.
and this is in the independent circuit.
Yeah, this was
in the
throughout
Northeast.
mostly upstate New. There was a company this first show was in like New Rochelle in a
Okay.
gym. Then some in Jersey, East Pennsylvania Wrestling was the name of a company I worked for. And then throughout, there was a company, Non-City Wrestling, that would do shows in upstate New York, never in a city. We bring entertainment to towns that never have it.
Yeah.
It's like Ithaca was too big of a city. We had to be 15 miles outside of Ithaca.
Oh God.
But it's where I kind of like worked my craft. We'd be given 15 minutes for a match, and no one knew who we were. It was me and the guys in the opening matches. So one time I asked them, I'm like, can I talk on the microphone for 3 minutes before the match? Then we have a 12-minute match, and I'll be a bad guy, and then there's a rooting interest.
Yeah.
And I got to the point, at first you're trying it. I'm like, I'm going too far and the crowd's turned off, or I'm being too clever and the crowd kind of likes me. But eventually I got to a point where give me a microphone for 3 minutes and they'll hit the other guy's entrance music and the crowd's cheering without even knowing who it is because they're happy someone's coming to shut me up.
Yeah.
I'm just making fun of the local town. I'm calling their girlfriends ugly. I'm doing anything.
So you really became a very good heel.
Yeah. Then there's a guy I knew who was from Vermont who was the good guy up there, and he wasn't getting cheered as much, and he's letting them know, bring Matt up here. He's a good bad guy. We face each other. Give us 6 months to do a storyline against each other. They'll all be cheering for me.
Yeah.
So you get booked.
Is that naturally who you are as a person? Do you like fight or flight? Do you lean more towards like the heel, like fight, or are you naturally more of a nice guy?
I think I'm a nice guy with a mean sense of humor.
Yeah, okay.
That's why in roasting also, I think the best people in roasting aren't actually mean people. A lot of things I've said in roasting are things I would say.
Yeah.
They're like roast jokes.
Well, and it
I
goes
would
back.
say.
The reason I bring it up is because it goes back to what you were saying about school.
Yeah.
Where you were a nice guy, you just your mouth would get you in trouble.
So I can lean into the bad things pretty easily. I think the best bad guys in wrestling or best villains are usually good people because you have to be real empathetic to be able to know what emotions you're touching on to really get people to react.
Well,
the people who are good guys and want to be loved by everyone, they're usually fucking psychos.
Yeah, well,
those are sociopaths.
It's the same thing in comedy.
Yeah.
Like we hear stories all the time. Anthony Jeselnik, one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet, and he goes on stage, and same thing with
Bill
Tosh.
Cosby. Bill Cosby, clean comedy.
Well, and there's some of those, and I know they talked about it on Your Mom's House before, Tom and Christina, but there's some of those clean comics where they're psychos.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're repressing everything because that's your. And obviously, I'm not mentioning anybody in particular, but just that idea that I'm going to be clean all the time, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So you leaned into this, and then you started, it started taking off in the independent circuit. Now, you're getting paid to do this at this point, right?
Yeah, not much. I think overall I did about 3 or 4 years. I probably broke even based on how much I was spending on travel.
Yeah.
I was in college at Stony Brook in Long Island, so I'm paying for Long Island Railroad tickets every weekend.
So you were going
travel,
senior year of high school into your first couple years of college. You're doing this.
Yeah. Up to spring break of my senior year of college was were my last matches. I was wrestling on a carnival in upstate New York for spring break.
Fuck yeah, you were.
Yeah.
And then what ended up happening? Like when you had the brain surgery, were you still wrestling, or was that
the brain
after?
surgery was years later.
Okay.
I actually got looked at because I was having like mood swings and stuff, and I thought it was long-term effects of concussions. And I found out I had a thing I was born with that actually probably, who knows, maybe I would have been a greater athlete my whole life. This thing was just growing in my brain my whole life.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So it was something that I love that you bring this up because this is something that I've dealt with because the reason I stopped playing football was I got my 8th documented concussion.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey man, and then this isn't, shortly after the lawsuit with the NFL came out and all these people were dying and they couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
And these older generation of NFL players were getting diagnosed with CTE and everything. And they were like, hey man, like you basically cannot keep playing. Like this is horrible for you. So then after that, and I started drinking a lot and stuff, and then I started having seizures and like these horrible headaches and stuff.
Yeah.
So I went to go see a neurologist, and he goes, yeah, man, like we can't diagnose it until you die, but you definitely have like CTE and stuff.
Yeah.
And my mood swings got way worse, and my bipolar like flared way up, and
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out why. And then it was because So you're having some of these issues, and you think, oh, this has to do with the concussions.
So yeah, my last like few months wrestling. Well, one, I wasn't getting booked as much because I burned plenty of bridges. I was, once I got a few years of experience and I felt comfortable doing what I was doing, I wasn't like the other kid where my first match in or first year and I'm saying stuff. But once I felt like I knew stuff, I wasn't very diplomatic in letting people know if I disagreed with their direction. I'm way better about that now, but I was like 20 years old and I'm just like, I know what I can do when I still didn't. So I burned plenty of bridges, and I started doing like the sketch comedy club in my college, a few stand-up things, and my thought was, because I also had like bone degeneration in almost every level of my vertebrae. I'm 21 years old. It's a 10-step process getting out of bed every day. I had knee issues. I was told I'm going to need knee replacements by the time I'm 40. And
this is all because of wrestling while you're wrestling. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, too. The quote-unquote fake wrestling hurt me way more than the real wrestling. Yeah. And then, it was 3 concussions in like a 6-month period.
Oh, shit.
And I probably had, there's 4 that I know about, and those 3 and 1 more. Probably more. Yeah. Just based on what we know now. And so I took a break to do stand up, and then
why did you do stand up? I wanted to ask you about that.
So I was always kind of the class clown.
I know you mentioned that. How did you know about stand up though? Because that was something like.
So I watched like when I was a teenager, when we first got cable, Comedy Central was big, South Park was big, and then they would do the Comedy Central Presents like all day long. Yeah. And so I would watch those like all the time.
Okay, so that's how you figured.
And then when I was in college, I started watching a lot more stand-up stuff. Yeah. But still, because I would always on the wrestling road trips, we're all just like saying street jokes the whole like road trips and just cracking jokes with each other. And I would always post jokes on my Facebook because I never knew what to actually post. And then after a while, I would post jokes I came up with, but I wouldn't tell anyone I came up with it. I would just be like, "This is another one I heard," because I was too ashamed to say I was writing jokes. And eventually
it's a very vulnerable state to be in.
And eventually people would say, like, you should write a book of these. You should do stand-up. You should do that. So, and a friend of mine was running the sketch comedy club and told me to try out. And for the tryout, you had to do a monologue. And I'm like, I don't fucking know monologue. So I just read 5 minutes worth of my Facebook jokes.
Oh, okay.
And that was my first time doing stand-up in the basement of the student union for 3 people who said, that's good, you're in.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then that winter, I came into the Manhattan, started doing open mics that summer, too.
And this is in 2012?
Yeah, doing the talent shows and on campus. That summer, I do open mics every day, come back in the fall, perform at the same talent show, and felt so good that I'm like, if I feel the same that I get from wrestling, the same fulfillment I get from wrestling, I get here. Yeah. And I still always kind of in the back of my head thought maybe somewhere down the line I'd get back into it. And I've done some work with other wrestling promotions, more like managing or backstage stuff. But overall, my heart wasn't in it as much as when I was really doing it. Yeah. And then this is only like 3 or 4 years ago now, I am having mood swings, anxiety, and stuff that I was dealing with personal stuff too. So it wasn't even like, at a point I was kind of like, what? I'm upset, but it's because there's stuff to be upset about.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was after like a month or 2 months straight where I'm like, every day I've been either really sad or really angry, and that's not how I normally am. So I went to a concussion management clinic and started doing like rehab, and they just tested me on basic things like balance, coordinate, all this stuff I didn't realize were also issues. Yeah. I would feel wide awake during some of the treatments. They're like, that's how you're supposed to feel. You've been foggy, like all the time. Yeah. And then I go to a neurologist, and they send me to get an MRI as a precaution, because at this point, 6 weeks of rehab, I'm feeling better. And I get this MRI, and they're like, "There's a giant thing in your brain, and we don't know what it is, and we got to get it out now."
What was it? It was
it's called a cerebral cavernoma, so it's like a malformation of blood vessels. Okay. Like a giant blood clot, basically.
You've had that since you were a kid?
When I brain formed, a couple of blood vessels tangled, and like a rubber band ball that just kept growing my entire life.
Oh my God.
And they couldn't explain how I was 28. They're like, they don't know how I lived that long with it. They said I wouldn't have made it past 30. I shouldn't have made it that long. When they took it out, they saw how all the blood vessels were dead. They estimated it had bled over 100 times in the last few months. And every time something like that bleeds in your brain, it's like 15% chance of death, 20% chance of permanent damage. So it's like one of those medical miracle stories. Fucking hacky medical. I'm a miracle.
I have the same story. Yeah, not the same, obviously, but I have a story about like you should have been dead hours ago. How did you survive?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. You're lucky you're alive.
Yeah. I think sometimes
Look at us having things in common.
there you go. I think sometimes also the surgeon. All right.
So medical miracle.
Medical
when something
miracle.
like that happened.
I think the surgeons sometimes put that once they've saved your life, they're like, I mean, you would have been dead if you didn't have a great surgeon like me. I think they may be amping it up a little bit to make themselves look good.
I remember because the second time I went to the hospital for alcohol poisoning, the doctors were like, listen, you got to stop drinking. Like, you're lucky. And I kept drinking for like 10 more years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's at least the surgery took like 7 hours. It was supposed to be 3 or 4 years. Like, it was really stuck in there.
Yeah.
That part of it. I did look up on WebMD like the symptoms I was having and what I had, and it does say that every time this bleeds, it is like you have a chance of dying.
So did it affect you? I have so many questions. So did you finish college at Stony Brook?
I finished college at Stony Brook.
What'd you go to school for?
I originally went for journalism because I thought if I don't make it in wrestling, I could write about sports. But I wrote for the school paper and had an editor who I disagreed with. And when you have that, you just don't get to write what you want.
Yeah.
I also took a class called The Business of Journalism that I think would make anybody who wants to be a good person not want to be a journalist. There was a couple teachers I liked, but overall they were all like journalists, and I felt like most of the people there were not people I wanted to be.
Yeah, so what did you end up doing?
I ended up changing. I wanted to drop out. My parents were like, just stay and get something. And I had taken a lot of history classes because I like history.
Yeah, me too.
So I just switched, and I was still able to graduate on time with a major in history and a minor in journalism.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So then you you get the surgery. This is when you said you were 28.
28, yeah.
So this is, years after
I'm
school
well
and
into
everything.
stand-up, and I'm all comedy at that point.
So were there any long-term effects? Like what?
Not that I know of. Every once in a while, I think, is everyone pretending that I'm not fucked up right now, and I actually am completely I'm completely messed up, and everyone's just being nice to me ever since the surgery. But no, I think there's certain things that are, I mean, almost immediately. Well, I was doing like the treatments before, but as far as anxiety and all that stuff that were symptoms that hadn't been before, that all went away.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I would.
So you ended up coming out better than when you went in.
Yeah, I mean, but also a lot of the stuff I would tell friends of mine about. I'm like, I'm crazy anxious, I'm miserable all the time. Like, oh, you're like every other comic. Yeah. But yeah, so that stuff, but also that was stuff that I never really dealt with when I was younger, really, or up until like the 6 months or so before the surgery.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came out and all that was better, but I have a scar. And also they said I'm pretty young for somebody who's had brain surgery, even though I'm old for someone who has what I had.
Yeah.
So recovery wasn't that long. Like the first day or so, I'm like with a walker, learning to walk again. But 2 days later, I'm able to. There was dizziness for a couple weeks. But for the most part, 6 weeks later, I'm back on stage, back working.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So did you, we were talking about it when you were 15 and how you were partying and stuff like that. When you got into wrestling, like full time, like in college and stuff, did you stop partying or did you party harder?
Partied harder.
Really?
I think I was a little smarter though. I wasn't getting in fights as much. I wasn't starting fights as much. I was still like cocky, so I was kind of like, somebody wants it, they can get it.
Are you talking about as far as wrestling or just when you guys are out?
After shows and bars, I was a good enough heel that people tried to fight me after shows.
Really?
Yeah.
God, you were so good at it.
Well, they would always say the same thing. They'd always be, I know it's not real, but what he said about my girlfriend actually went too far.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So did you, you had to shut some people up? Shut it down?
Yeah, I probably didn't have to, but when I was 19, 20, I was like, okay, doing it.
Yeah. How were you big back then? Because you said you were only about 140 in high school. And
yeah, and my senior year of high school, I graduated on like 155, and I just like ate everything. I bulked. I got up to like 225, 230. I'm down like 210, 215 now. But
how tall?
6'2".
Okay.
Yeah, and at my biggest, wrestling numbers, I'm 6'3", 235.
Yeah.
And he had the boots with the inch lift in them.
Yeah.
Add a few pounds to that weight.
So then you So when did the wrestling, I guess lifestyle, like the partying and the going out, because we've all seen, Beyond the Mat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
When did that happen when you started after the tag team match, or was that something you kind of grew into?
No, yeah. I mean, I hung out with the guys in the bar, but I still wasn't in with them yet. Once I did it enough that I had like my crew or the crew of people you'd go out with, I was still only ever a drinker because I started wrestling like within a year after the Chris Benoit tragedy.
Yeah.
Where even though we now look at it as more of a CTE thing, at the time a lot of the talk was he had steroids in the home and it was like a drug thing.
Yeah.
So even a lot of these independent shows would be drug testing. I don't think they actually were. I think they may have just been saying they were, but I was like 17 and just scared.
If you can scare enough people into thinking you are, you're gonna.
And in high school I only drank. I didn't hang out with the potheads in high school.
Yeah.
So I was only ever a drinker. So when I started wrestling, I wanted to do steroids because I was so skinny and I wanted to bulk up, and my coach just told me, work out for all 4 years of college, eat all the protein and calories you can get, you'll be fine. He said at that point it would be worse for me to take steroids because the direction of wrestling is smaller, sleeker athletes, which if you watch now, I mean, when I was in the locker rooms, I was in the middle maybe, and in the last few years, I've been in some wrestling locker rooms. I'm one of the tallest, biggest guys.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm less big now than I was then.
Yeah.
So now it looks like all drama kids who do CrossFit. But
that is something I have noticed.
Yeah.
Just going back to the AEW thing, because a lot of the wrestlers would come into the restaurant, and I'm like, I'm a giant next to you.
Exactly.
Like, there's a couple guys like Warlord and like Moxley's like 230 and stuff like that, but like some like MJF would come in, and I'm like, dude, you're tiny.
He at least looks in shape.
Yeah.
Because I think Floyd Mayweather is like a big deal for that people saw, the best fighter in the world is tiny, Conor McGregor. So you can have some of that. I don't like when I watch fighters who they can do flips, but then they throw a punch and it looks weak as shit.
Yeah, you're like, come on now.
Yeah. Learn how to do the actual thing before you can, like, let me believe you're a real fighter.
Yeah. So you were told, hey, it's getting a little smaller, so don't do the steroid.
And also, it's a bad PR look for you.
Yeah.
It's a worse look to be caught doing drugs than it is a good look to be gigantic.
Yeah, that's true.
And he just said with other drug stuff, he's like, I don't give a shit if you smoke weed or whatever, but fucking if you fail a drug test because of it and then someone in some small town somewhere cares and you don't get booked because of it, is it worth it?
Yeah, true.
And I was a drinker and they never tested for whiskey. Nope. So I was in college. I was partying it up every night at my dorm.
How was that going? Because you were doing these shows a lot of the weekends.
Yeah.
So were you, because you're living on campus, I assume?
Yeah.
Stony Brook is pretty far from
Yeah,
Queens.
I was dorming. I would say every 2 or 3 weeks I would be on the road doing wrestling shows. So then I'd cluster them. So a whole weekend I'm touring wrestling, and then the next 2 weekends I'm back on campus.
So when you're on campus, you guys are partying. Did you get right into it when you got there? Or
I got lucky that my first weekend there was like the frats are throwing parties for the freshmen.
Yeah, we've heard this. We've heard this on the show.
Then I didn't know how I felt about going to a frat house with people I didn't know, so I was going to go a little later, and on my way people were already coming back saying no, they just throw the party and then after 20 minutes call the cops on themselves.
Oh, really?
And then, so they don't have to get rid of all their beer, and they just hang out and drink by themselves, and all the freshmen get kicked out. But it's a way to get freshmen, you pay $5 on the way in.
Oh.
So you were just scamming people.
Fuck that.
And then, like, that week in, like, one of those, like, dorm meeting things where everyone, they're doing icebreakers and everything. Yeah. I, like, was talking to the guy next to me who was a couple years older than me. They threw parties at a house that they were friends with the guy who owned it, and they would just go do parties there,
so
party in the dorm.
They live in the dorms, but then they would have parties off campus.
Yeah, or even in the dorm, and that just became my partying crew, and those were guys who I became friends with and good trust, and so even weeknights, weekends, I was partying all the time, then going on the road wrestling, some small town, I'm under a different name, hooking up with girls I'll never see again.
Yeah. Just fucking living the life, man. So then we talked about it, you get into stand-up, you start doing that. Now, are you still when you get into stand-up in 2012, obviously before the surgery, even after the surgery, are you still are you still living that kind of like wrestling lifestyle of like,
Not
let's go out to
really.
shows and then get hammered?
No, at that point, I feel like an old man almost, where I'm like, I've done my partying years. I kind of got it. Since I was 15 years old, I've been going out and drinking. Then at my 19, 20, 21, I'm hooking up with girls plenty. By the time I'm like doing comedy, I had a mindset of, I burned a lot of bridges in wrestling. I did some stupid stuff partying. I want to have a good reputation in comedy. I want to treat people better than I have in the past. So I kind of like tried to reset myself. And to the point where there's times where I'll like be at a comedy party, drinking beer, and someone's like, I didn't know you drank. And I'm like, I do. I'm not partying all the time anymore. A year after I graduated, I remember a bunch of us, my college buddies, we all hung out again. And when I'm hanging out with them, we're drinking like we drank before, but I hadn't drank like that in a year.
Yeah.
And I think you asked her a crazy drinking story. This is when I woke up in an ambulance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I
always love it when the stories just happen now.
Yeah, we all. I'm drinking like I was drinking back when I was in college, but I just didn't have the same tolerance.
Yeah. When was
at that
this
point.
again?
A year after I graduated.
Okay, so this is like
2013, spring of 2013. We met up for one of our friends' birthdays. We would always drink on their birthday each year. But this time, I hadn't been doing keg stands every night. I hadn't been going through...
Where are you living at this point?
I'm back at my parents' place in Queens.
Okay.
And yeah, I hadn't been going through 12 racks of beer every night. So I'm drinking a bunch, and I don't remember much in this. Now, my friends have told me that we were all on the train on the way home. I seemed fine, and then I get off the train, and the conductor comes back on, the doors closed, and he tells them, by the way, your friend just tripped over a cop's bike.
Oh, really?
I don't remember any of this.
So this is when you got off the train, you tripped over a cop's
apparently.
bike.
I remember waking up in the back of an ambulance.
Oh, Jesus.
And them telling me, and me not wanting a hospital bill, and them telling me, there's the inner Jew coming out again, and them telling me that we can't take you to the hospital involuntarily if you don't want to go. I was like, I'm good, let me out. And I'm just in the middle of Flushing, Queens, on the way to the hospital.
Why were you in the ambulance? You never... Oh,
they picked me up, I guess.
And you would never know because you never ended up in the hospital.
Yeah.
They just have to drop you off.
Yeah.
That's actually what happened to me the last time I drank and ended up in the ER. When I woke up, like, I try to tell the story better as a storyteller.
Yeah.
But the end of the story, I always say I just left the hospital, but it's actually a lot more anticlimactic than that. Like, same kind of thing. I was like, every second I'm in here is hundreds of dollars.
Exactly.
So once I had the ability to kind of like get up and move, and my friend who was with me was like, no, you can't leave. I was just like, I'm fucking pulling IVs out. I'm like, I'm fucking out of here, dude.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, wait, you have to fill out. And I was like, nope, I'm gone. Because they can't physically stop. It's not prison. Like, they can't hold you against your will.
Yeah.
So I just walked out the front door.
I just said, let me out of here. I don't want this bill. I was supposed to do some like a charity event later that day. It was like an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who
this
was
would be the
running
next day?
I woke up in the ambulance. It's like 9 a.m.
Oh, okay. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. We were out all night.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to do some event at like 2 or 3 o'clock. I call my friend. I'm like, hey, don't be alarmed. I did just wake up in an ambulance, but I'm going to go home and nap. I'll be fine. I'll still be there. I slept till like 6 p.m. and never showed up.
Oh, you never showed up?
But she later told me she expected that I wasn't going to have to get in that call.
God, were you like so hungover?
I don't even remember, honestly. Maybe not. At the time, I never really got bad hangovers.
Oh, really?
Until the last few years.
Okay.
I've only started getting like pretty bad hangovers.
So when you drink now, like if you have a couple of beers at a party or something, do you wake up like, oh man?
No, not a couple of beers, but if I drink and get drunk, I was just on vacation and I was on a cruise ship and it was nonstop drinking. And there were a couple of the days where I woke up pretty hungover and I just went to the gym, did like big shoulder workout or something. And that gets me over the hangover.
Wow. See, I'm incredibly envious of people like you in that situation because my drinking was so like out of control that my hangover, like literally I would be on the cusp of giving myself alcohol poisoning like every night.
Yeah.
So my hangovers, every day I would wake up, like I would almost have to, I would have to drink to like
get over the hangover.
Yeah, just to like calm down. Because
I had that with a buddy once. We partied all night. I remember it was. When
was this?
This was in college. This was senior year. It was when they were recalling the Four Locos.
Yeah.
So we threw a going away party for Four Loco, and I remember my buddy had 2 full Four Locos. I had 1. We wake up, then we get home at like
so much sugar, so much caffeine.
We get back to the dorm like
alcohol.
9, 10 a.m. I wake up at like 5. I remember having Gatorade. Gatorade was a good hangover drink in the morning. We had a Gatorade and Chef Boyardee for breakfast. That's all I had in my dorm room fridge.
Hell yeah.
My buddy who had 2 Four Locos woke up at like 9 or 10 at night, and I had to like wake him up because we were going out to party again.
So this is like 12 hours after you get home.
And he's waking up hungover, going out to drink to get over the hangover.
Yeah, that was something. Because, I just used to drink so much that when people tell stories like, when I go on vacation or something, I'll let loose. I'm always like, God, what's that like?
That's where I'm kind of at now. Well, some of it is also, I was a big workout guy forever, and now it's like, drink a little too much, and I see it, and you see it now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Definitely.
So as far as like workout stuff, I like had to cut out more sweets, and drinking is, for me, it wasn't, I think it was always a party thing. I'm like grateful that I don't think I ever had like
That's
a problem with it.
Because I've had, in doing this show, I've had a lot of comics on who are now sober. And by no fault, like it's not a requirement for the show.
Yeah.
It's just they come on and then they talk about how, we just had TJ on and he talks about how he hasn't had a drink in a while. Obviously, Espy's another person who hasn't drank in a long time.
Yeah.
Isaac, Andrew, all those people that I've had on just haven't been drinking. Tori, I'm trying not to leave anybody out because I don't want to be like, fuck you, man. I don't drink either. But it's interesting to me because then I'll have other people on like you who, for lack of a better term, are normal. Like you don't have, like you might have an addictive personality when it comes to working out and stuff, but it's not transitioning into like booze and stuff like that.
I think I have an obsessive personality
exactly.
where I don't get addicted to things, but I'm like, I go and see a movie and I really like it. I now have to spend the next 2 hours when I get home reading everything about that movie, the sequel, the prequel, like everything, so every actor.
You have an
and
obsessive compulsion, but you don't have an addictive compulsion.
Yeah, so if I'm like in partying mode or in wrestling mode, like with baseball when I was a kid, I memerized the history of everything, the stats of everything. With drinking, it was all just like, I think it's a similar thing where I'm not the bad thing, but I'm the good kid who likes to do the bad thing.
Yeah.
But I can always pull it back, and as long as there's other stuff I'm doing, like even in comedy, I'm kind of like misbehaving in comedy. So it's like, all right, every night I'm going up and saying things I'm not supposed to say. Every week at Fight Club, I'm saying stuff I'm not supposed to say. I don't need to be getting drunk every night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You just like you like dabbling in the bad thing.
Yeah.
So let's talk. You mentioned it a little bit ago. You went on vacation.
Yes.
You went to Alaska and then to Canada, if I followed your story.
Yes, it was an Alaskan
Instagram,
cruise, and we did one stop in Canada at the end.
Yeah, I had mentioned to you, I was like, I'm not allowed up there. They take their DUI so seriously.
It's so weird how strict, like every magnet or souvenir thing is all about how we're Canadians and we love our beer, but then like on the cruise ship, when you're docked, only one bar is allowed to be open on the ship on each floor when you're in Canada because of their drinking laws.
So so the Canadians themselves, you guys fancy yourselves, I'm going to talk right into the camera for this one. You guys fancy yourselves heavy drinkers, but that's only because your government has put a governor on how much you're allowed to drink.
Yeah.
Why don't you come down south where you can drink as much as you want? And then we'll see. Who can
I will
really
say,
party.
I maybe got to go to small town Canada because I was in Victoria, which is a city.
Yeah.
And all the places I was in.
It's a city, I promise.
Yeah. Because all the places I was in Alaska, I was going to like local bars and just trying local beers. And the Alaskan beer I liked way better than the Canadian one. But also like in these small towns in Alaska, like Victoria's got a lot of stuff to do. In Alaska, all they have is beer.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they need it.
So what you had mentioned, not only were you drinking, but you did mention taking edibles.
Yes.
In Alaska.
So this is interesting. My edibles story. Because I was getting drug tested, I was never a drug guy. I had never been high.
Yeah.
I was always drinking. And then after I graduated college, I'm like, I'm not going to start a new habit to spend money on. I'm about to be a broke comic in New York for the next 10, 15 years of my life.
Yeah.
And also, I always felt like my drinking stories were always like we got drunk and we did something fun, and high stories always felt like we got high and watched Family Guy for 6 hours.
Yeah.
So
even I was always the drinker. My roommate in college, Murph, was always the smoker.
yeah.
And the only times I ever really smoked was when I was like super hungover, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this will help." But it's same thing. Like we would get high, and a couple times I got way too high, and we would just fucking watch TV. And I'm like,
which is,
this
I mean,
not an adventure.
yeah, I think I'm naturally more kind of laid back.
Yeah.
So I want to get crazy.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to be more laid back. But then last year I had a friend get married in Colorado, and we're all in the Rocky Mountains. We're all getting edibles, and I'm like, I'll try this.
Yeah,
Why
let's do
not? And since then, yeah, every once in a while. And when I was going to be going to Alaska, I'm like, let me fucking
Let's do it.
let's get some. We were in Seattle before, so I got the edibles there. I didn't realize everywhere we went in Alaska, there were
Yeah.
dispensaries.
Oh, are they? So it's
Yeah.
completely all right.
It's legal there and there. I didn't know, like, small town Alaska, even if it's legal, maybe they won't have it.
Yeah,
I know some
exactly.
of it's a little more conservative. You never know. When I was in Colorado, it was like we were out like 3 hours outside of Denver, so there'd be these small towns like half a mile long. You could walk from one side of the town to the other in 10 minutes. And they all of them would have like a store, a coffee shop, a restaurant, and a dispensary.
Yeah, that's
like
just
before
par for the
hospital or
course.
police
Yeah.
station, you need a dispensary.
Oh God.
But yeah, so I just like walked into the like since I've been doing edibles, I'm like, I do enjoy sometimes just having a night, even at home. I came back, I had leftover edibles, and there was one night I had free. I just like took an edible and rewatched Gladiator.
Yeah.
And it's just, I really do like just getting high and
Is that when you wrote
relaxing.
that? You wrote that.
Oh, the Gladiator
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, I just wrote the
I saw
the
it,
big speech that he
because-
gives and just replaced it with dirty words.
Yeah, because I saw it for a second. Because Gladiator is one of my favorite movies.
Me
and
too.
People listening know I quote like random movies all the time.
Yeah.
But me and my ex-fiance used to talk about this. My first son I was going to name Maximus. After
Yeah.
that, my name is, because it means the great in ancient
Yes.
Greek.
My name is Maximus
Decimus
Decimus Meridius, General of the Incels of the North.
Yeah, you
Commander.
twisted it all around. I was like General of the
Yeah.
Felix Legions to the North, and I'm reading, and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, that says incel.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I kept reading, and I was like, this motherfucker.
Yeah. Husband to my bitch wife, father to a homosexual, and I will have my dick sucked in this life or the next.
That was what it was.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I'm like in Alaska. There's like the national parks. I'm just wandering in. I went far enough in that I could feel like I'm away from everything, but not so far in that if a bear eats me, no one ever finds my remains.
Yeah, right.
There was like
So
Native.
did you take
yeah.
them before you went in, or did
Yeah.
you get to where you were going?
It takes
and
me
then take-
about an hour to get a really good high. So I would like the ship would dock. I would take the edible and then go out and
Okay,
wander
so you were
around.
doing this like every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did a few of the days for 2 of the ports, and then there was one day we were at sea all day, and that night there was like going to be DJing, dancing, and stuff, and I took an edible for that. I'm still figuring out like my tolerance.
Yeah.
Like the first couple of times I did edibles, 25 milligrams, and I felt high and it was good. And then these were 10 milligram gummies, so I took 2, and then the day we were at sea I took 1. And I still felt a good high.
Okay.
Because I think it's because I haven't done it much. I'm like, I don't know if I'll have a low tolerance, but also I'm physically big, so
Yeah.
maybe I'll have a higher tolerance.
That's a weird thing because
yeah.
and I just know this from drinking, was not only did I have a high tolerance, but I was a big dude. So I remember
Yeah.
like on my second DUI when I blew, the cop was like, "How are you talking to us right now?" And it's
Yeah.
like, dude, like don't worry, I've been preparing for this my whole life.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of I think my tolerance for drinking comes back fairly quick. Like by the last day, I had like 20 drinks
you were
maybe in a
fine?
few hours, and I was fine.
Yeah.
I was like drunk, but not. I didn't black
Anyone
out.
in the medical profession listening is like, "You're not fine after that."
Yeah,
But it's like,
yeah.
"Nah, we were fine."
It was that's so I would do a lot of whiskey cokes. I would do the cocktails they have, and then
You would do straight Coke?
whiskey Diet Coke.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah.
The only reason I say that is because I can't imagine doing regular, for how much I drank, doing
Yeah.
regular Coke. All the sugar and stuff
Yeah.
that's in that, I'd be fucking.
I'll usually do whiskey Diet Cokes.
Yeah.
I would have Michelob Ultras, and then I started a few years ago. I was on a cruise, and some of the girls we were hanging out with were ordering a drink called the Fuzzy Navel,
Yeah.
which I had never had before. And a couple times I tried to order it since, and the bartender doesn't know what it is, and I'm very embarrassed and have to explain what it is.
Peach schnapps.
peach schnapps, and orange juice.
Yep.
And so I ordered it here, and I must have had like 9 or 10 in a row, just one
peach
after the
schnapps.
other.
It's not even. It's not gonna. That's a cordial, if anything.
Yeah. So when I came in and ordered my first one, they had to refill the bottle, and by the time I ordered my last one, they had to refill it again. I don't think a lot of other people were drinking peach schnapps. But yeah, those can trick you. The sweet drinks, I love either like the whiskey, the darkest like whiskey, or the sweetest like Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Okay.
I love sweet drinks.
Yeah, I got a sweet tooth too. I'm a sweets guy. When I first started drinking a lot in college, I was a Captain guy.
Yeah.
And I'd mix like Captain and Diet, or I would do then I started doing Captain and Mountain Dew.
I haven't done that before. That sounds...
It's a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why my hangovers were so bad, because it's like you're drinking
the
syrup.
Sugar, yeah.
And then I remember when my drinking started to get worse and worse after football, I started doing Sailor Jerry, because I could literally drink almost an entire handle of Captain and I would feel sick before I'd feel drunk because of the sugar.
Yeah.
And it wasn't strong enough. So then I switched to Sailor Jerry, which you go from 70 proof Captain to 92 proof Sailor Jerry, and that would fuck my day up.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And I would mix Code Red Mountain Dew with Sailor Jerry.
Yeah.
And that was, so you want to talk about sweet, that was the fucking. So once my alcoholism really took hold, I had to switch to vodka and Gatorade, because I was like, I can't do this like full sugar anymore.
I'll do vodka Red Bulls a lot, especially it used to be, I haven't done it, but Fight Club's always on Sunday nights, and for a while, one of the bars we were in, it was always a hangout after also, and it was the end of my week, but also like... I was exhausted because I'm like, I finally did the Fight Club. I've been like planning for it like all week. You have dropouts. You have so much stuff you have to deal with the writing and everything. Every time, an hour before the show, I'm like, I don't know if we're going to pull this off. And we do.
God, every week you got to do it.
And, but then it's also Sunday and I still want to hang out and drink. So they always would have a vodka Red Bull ready for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because that's a good drink where it's like, I want to drink, but I also need to pick me up now.
And that's the one good thing about vodka Red Bulls is it'll get you going.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about, so we have a couple more stories. We might not get to the homeless guy one, but I do want to talk about this charity walk, because this seems hilarious.
Yes. So I mentioned that I was going to do that Easter egg hunt. Basically, this all came about when I was in college. You ever heard of like Key Club in high school or Kiwanis International?
Yeah, Kiwanis.
So in college, it's called Circle K.
Okay.
My high school had a Key Club, but I never knew anything about it. In college, the guy who I met that was like with my partying crew, a couple years older than me, my freshman year of college, he was...
Is this the guy that had the friend that had the house?
Yes.
Okay.
He was in Key Club in high school, and he wanted to start a Circle K on campus.
Okay.
And I was just hanging out with him all the time. I was just looking for stuff to do on campus, so I joined with him. I was the treasurer. I ended up becoming president.
Oh, wow.
I would go to the conventions and everything because, I mean, mostly it's like I'm just trying to do stuff and be involved with stuff, whether that's partying, doing community service, sure, going rebuilding houses in New Orleans for Habitat for Humanity and partying on Bourbon Street every night. That's an event.
You did that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
We did a week, and it was the international events would be a week somewhere. 1 week was St. Louis, 1 year was Virginia Beach, and one was New Orleans.
Okay.
And New Orleans, we were in a hotel a block away from Bourbon Street. So that was
Sheridan?
I think so.
That's the one we stayed in when I played in the New Orleans.
Yeah.
Bowl.
And every night out on
Literally,
Bourbon
it's
Street,
a fucking block away, man.
up at 7 a.m. and you're rebuilding homes that were damaged in Katrina.
That's awesome, man.
So for a lot of these events, there was one night, one of the drunkest I've ever gotten, and the next day I had to go from Long Island to Manhattan to the Parkinson's Unity Walk.
Yeah.
And
so the night before you get fucking hammered.
Yes. I don't remember a lot of it. I woke up and my dresser was on the other side of the room. Papers are on the floor and everything. I
This
realized.
is in your dorm?
Yes. My roommate was gone for the weekend, so it's just me in the room. I don't know what has happened. I know.
How did you even start drinking that? Because you're not a drink alone guy.
I was at a party with my friend, in the dorm, and from what I do remember, I was playing beer pong, and one of my friends decided that, well, when you have to drink when someone makes a shot at your cup, but when you're making shots, you're not drinking. What if you celebrated every time you made a shot with a shot of Jack Daniels?
Oh my God, that's fucking terrible.
That was one of my last memories of the night.
Yeah.
I'm just drinking all night. One of my suite mates, we had like the suite, so it was 3 rooms in each suite.
Yeah.
And
you guys all share a bathroom and then
yeah. So there were like
people,
6
two
of us. The one who was in my room with me is gone for the weekend. We come back down. Well, so one of my suite mates comes back down. My other suite mate who was still in the room didn't go to the party, sees him really drunk, and is like, "Are you okay?" And all he says is, "Matt's worse." And then 2 other guys from the party come into the room carrying me in.
That's hilarious.
This is all like secondhand from what I was told happened.
Yeah,
I don't
'cause you're
remember any of
blacked out
this.
at this
Yeah. They put me down in the bed. I said I had to go to the bathroom, and they're like, "All right, then go." And I start unzipping my pants, like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" Like, let's pick him up and walk him to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And they hear me pee. They hear the toilet. They don't hear the toilet flush. So they go in, and then they don't see anything in the toilet, and just start looking around like, where did he go?
Oh my God.
I think the best guess is the shower.
Yeah.
Because they didn't see it on the floor anywhere else. Apparently that night I tried to puke in my shoe at one point, which is kind of nice. Like, I had the wherewithal to know I should puke in something. Not just on the floor everywhere.
We had a very funny comic from Jersey, Alex Nicholas on the show.
I know him. Yeah.
And he talked about throwing up in his backpack on the train.
Yeah.
Because same thing, though. He was like fucked up, and he's like, well, I got to throw up somewhere, and I'm not just going to throw up.
Yeah.
So he opened up his backpack, took out his Jordans, and threw up in his backpack. Yeah. So you try to throw up in a shoe.
So I tried to throw up in a shoe. They moved the dresser out of the way to like all be around me in the bed.
That's how, yeah.
And so I wake up the next morning, like a half hour. I'm missed the first train. I have to get the next one. I'm gonna get there a little late, but still in time to do this Parkinson's charity walk. I was the only one going from my school.
Yeah.
So that's why I had to go too. Was like each club for different events, you'd have a representative from your school.
So you have to be there.
I was the representative from Stony Brook Circle K.
Yeah.
And so I wake up and I'm like, I gotta go. And I'm not hungover. I'm still drunk.
Yeah.
I don't know how long ago it was I went to sleep at that point. I'm still drunk. So I'm like wobbling to the Long Island Railroad. I like call, I'm wondering who else is going to be up. I called my brother. I'm like just calling friends to talk to try and sober up by talking.
Yeah.
My suite mates call me because they're freaking out. They just woke up and
you're gone.
And I'm gone. And they're like, where did this guy go? And so I'm talking to them. I don't think I really fully sobered up, but I was like, because I was still energetic. I wasn't even tired.
Had all that Jack Daniel's sugar running through your body.
Yeah, we got dinner after the Parkinson's Unity Walk, and my head was just down the whole time to the point the waiter had to it was like a nice restaurant. The waiter had to ask my friends to make sure my head stayed up because it looked bad for somebody to be passed out in the restaurant. But I remember I get there. There were a couple people who I was friendly with who I knew. I remember a little bit of this. I remember there was one girl who I just drunkenly rambled to about pro wrestling for like 3 hours. We ended up like being good friends after. That was one of the first times we met, and she said she thought she would never want to talk to me again after that.
That's awesome.
So I'm just drunk, and someone I guess mentioned something about pro wrestling,
and you were like,
I'm off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did the Parkinson's Unity Walk, which by the way is so fun. Like they make jokes.
Yeah.
Like they play like Shake, Rattle, and Roll on the speakers. Shake It by Metro Station.
Yeah.
All the top fundraising team names like the Movers and Shakers. Like they're doing puns about Parkinson's. Where if I were to like say that to someone, they'd be like, "That's a messed up joke." I'm like, this is what they do when they're raising money for it.
It's so weird because you and I think are similar in the fact that some of the stuff we say on stage, people will be like, and we're like, no, this is the fucking this is the point. This is what we're supposed to be talking about.
I've gotten better at on stage being able to bring everyone in. Where it'll still get me is you post like clips online or clips from a podcast, because that's where there's no context of the comedy club. It's just you're scrolling through. You just saw a military family reunion. You saw a Make-A-Wish get granted, and now it's me doing a Holocaust joke. You're like, fuck this guy.
Yeah. But you ended up doing the walk. You got it done.
I got there. I did the walk.
Passed out at the restaurant.
Passed out at the restaurant afterwards.
Can you tell your friend he needs to keep his head up?
Yeah.
We have an image to maintain.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Again.
Thanks for having me.
Plug everything into the camera one more time.
Comedy Fight Club, greatest roast battle show in the world. We've been doing road shows, so if you follow the YouTube channel, you see we got a Connecticut show on there. We got Philadelphia coming up, New Jersey, and then September we're back in New York every Sunday night. At Comedy Fight NYC on Twitter and Instagram, youtube.com/Comedy Fight Club, Patreon for bonus content, and Locker Room Talk podcast.
Boom. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. At Brennan T Comedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. Getting the one-man show together that'll be hopefully ready to roll in January. So check out the website for updates on that. And subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/BrennanTastic. Don't forget to get your merch. And we will talk to y'all next week.